What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Lumsden Motorsports Garage. I'm Wade Lumsden. In this video, we are going to start putting some front suspension together. We're going to get the lower control arms installed, do some ball joint stuff, and spindles. We're going to have to mess around with the spindles a little bit with reaming them out and drilling them out and stuff, but that's what we're going to do in today's video. If you like what we're doing here, make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. I appreciate it. Let's get to work. All right, so to start with, I am going to take my upper control arm apart, clean up the ball joint, and get this put back together. I'm not really going to adjust any of the measurements here because this had my front end set to start with rather close, so I'm just going to, like I said, take it apart, get everything lubed up and cleaned up. So 2 set screws. Clean out all the old grease and dirt, as much as I can. I'm sure you can hear that squeak noise, so we're gonna take finish taking this control arm off so we can get that all lubed up and get rid of that squeak. So my control arms have a heim joint, and then my heim joints have a little insert inside them to space them down from this 5/8 to be able to use a 1/2 inch bolt. So we're going to clean all that stuff up as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start putting this back together. Got my little spacers in place. Get this set up here. First thing I'm gonna do is put anti-seize on my bolt. Then I'm gonna start sliding it through here. Spacer, and then I know next is going to be the heim. Now I just got to get the other spacer on the other side lined up enough to let the bolt go through. And then there you have it. Start the nut on the back side. Okay. Now we just got to do the same thing for the front. Okay, nice and tight, everything's lubed up. I'm just going to clean out some of the excess anti-seize laying around. But as you can tell, got rid of our squeak. So just by cleaning it up and lubing it up, that's awesome. A squeak is a good telltale that something's bound up. So always hunt your squeaks. All right, now I'm going to go back to the upper ball joint here. We got it all cleaned out. Looks good inside. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the old ball joint. This one was straight, so I'm just going to clean it off. Okay, that's clean. Now, I'm actually going to clean out the cap too. Alright, it's all cleaned out too. Alright, so to install the ball joint, these Howe ball joints is what I'm using at least. You do it with it still dry. You go ahead and put the ball joint in. And then you come to your cap. You screw her down in there. And it says to go until you make contact with the ball joint. Okay, contact with the ball joint. And then it says to back off the cap 1/8 of a turn. So 1/8 of a turn, so this would be a quarter, so 1/8 is going to be about here-ish. So 1/8 of a turn. And look how free that moves. And then we lock it back down. There you have it. So now you'll notice there's a lot of play in there. So we don't forget, we're going to go ahead and put grease in it now. Now the instructions say to turn this, and you'll feel it kind of tighten up, but it says to twist this or turn this while you're pumping it full of grease until grease comes out. Because remember, this whole thing was dry, so you got to work it initially to get the grease worked around in there. All right. Got grease coming out of the bottom. Awesome. Go ahead and clean up just a little bit here. And there you have it. Now there's nothing making it squeak, making the upper control arm squeak. So we're good. I will, before I go racing, I'm going to end up hitting all of these spots with grease again. It's just, I'm a little forgetful sometimes. So just in case I do forget, I wanted to make sure I greased it right away. I made sure it was good to go. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and put on the lower control arm. As you can see, it's already up in place. On this side, I was having some issues. I actually couldn't get the control arm in. So I ended up having to bend this back a little bit, this out a little bit, this out a little bit, and this out a little bit, because they were all kind of crushed in from how messed up this lower control arm was. Go back and watch my video of me tearing it apart, and you'll see that it was really messed up, and so it must have twisted in there. I didn't show how I adjusted it, but literally it was just with a crescent wrench and bending it out a little bit and taking that 1/2 inch rod and running it through and making sure that it ran through all 4 holes. Here's the rod, actually. It ran through all 4 holes without any issues. So, sorry I didn't show you that, but that's what I did. I just, you know, kind of made little adjustments until the control arm with the bushings and stuff would go in. Now I have 1 bolt in the back, but it's going to come out. It's going to get anti-seized and put back in. For the front bolt, I went ahead and bought these Weir's bolts. The cool thing, I'll pop it out of the package here. It's kind of cool what they did. Right here at the end of the bolt, they turned it into a point. Right? So you stick this in and it sticks out of the front of your car. And so now you have a place to measure from the ground up to the point, and it points in the exact same spot every time, and you're not guessing where center of your bolt is when you're checking your ride heights and stuff. So for the price, I was like, hey, you know, I'll give them a shot. I went ahead and got 2 of these. You only need 2 because they point out the front, and there's only 2 fronts, one on the left and one on the right. So I'm going to anti-seize this, shove it in the hole, get it started. I'm going to pull this out, anti-seize that, and shove it back in the hole too. Just needs a wee bit of motivation. There we go. Anti-seized. Get it shoved back in. Again, just a wee bit of motivation. Or a washer and a lock nut. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and snug this one up. Get it snug where it's not going to come off. And we'll tighten up the front as well. So this is a 9/16. Well, it's kind of cool. Tighten that down all the way and it still moves nice and free. Bottomed out on itself, so not bad. Okay, so now we have that. I'm going to go ahead and lock this control arm up in place. I'll lock this control arm up in place. I have this cool little Weir's ride height stick here. I'm gonna throw a bolt in real fast. Awesome, and that's just to kind of mock hold it in place of where the ride height would be. And then I'm going to crawl underneath. I'm actually going to crawl underneath here and grease. There's 2 grease zerks for the bushings. I'm going to go ahead and put some grease in the bushings real fast. Awesome. Now with that done, I'm going to run it through some motion. Nice and smooth. Awesome. Go ahead and lock it back in place again. Alright, now I'm going to install the lower ball joint. Back out our screws, set screws. Now I got my lower control arms from BHE. They did me a solid and welded on the shock mounts in a different spot than they normally do to fit my car, and then they also welded in the housing for the Howe ball joint. It's pretty cool setup. It came, control arm, housing, shock mount, and it came with the bushings as well. It was pretty cool setup. So that was BHE, which is the Bill Harris Enterprises of Harris Chassis or Harris Race Cars. I'm happy with them. They look great. Well done. But notice how if you do them yourself and you're going to weld in your own housing, make sure you put the set screws here. Make sure you put those set screws in the spot where you can get to them. Okay, you don't want to put them in a weird spot where you can't. And same thing with your bushings in the back. Make sure you put the Zerk fittings or your grease fittings where you can get to them. Anyways, installing the lower ball joint is going to be the same as doing the upper ball joint. I had bent ones, so I got a new lower ball joint. I'll go ahead and pull it on up in here. Ooh. Go. Screw that in until it makes contact, which is right there. Cool. And then back it off 1/8 of a turn. About 1/8 of a turn. And then we'll lock it down. All right. It's tight. Nice and tight. Awesome. And just like the top, we're going to go ahead and throw some grease in the bottom. As you pump pressure in there, it makes it nice and stiff. So there we go. Now you got grease coming out of the top. Clean this up. Nice and movie. It's good. Cool. Good to go. All right. So next little thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my weight jack bolt installed. I'm going to a different weight jack than I had before. I'll show you here in a second, but that's the hole. I made sure that I sprayed it out with some brake clean and wiped it out, made sure it was nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and screw this bad boy in there. And once I get it started, most of the way here, I'll end up putting a little bit of anti-seize on it, just to make sure that it's always nice and easy to move. So I'm going to set you down and go ahead and do that. All right, so I told you that I'm going to a different weight jack bolt or weight jack. This is what I had before. Absolutely nothing wrong with using this. I just kind of wanted to go with something different, some new technology. So I went ahead and got myself the Weir's outside diameter grab spring bucket with their weight jack bolt. I had to get the new bolt because the style bolt that I had won't work with this. If you look at the weight jack bolt itself, this little thing down here. It's a spring-loaded clip, right? Which will slide into this, completing that weight jack. Now, I don't know if you should or not, but I'm going to. I'm going to go ahead and, for grins and giggles, put a dab of anti-seize on here for when I slide this in. Come over here. It's as easy as upsy daisy, clips on. There you have it. Weight jack bolt installed. It moves up and down really nice. Now when we go to put the spring and whatnot in here, I'll go into a little bit more detail about why I went to this and some of the other cool stuff that we're going to do. But there's other things we need to do before the spring goes in. Alright, so you might be wondering what I'm doing.
Well, I'm just coloring. Just coloring and have a good time.
No, there's actually a reason why I'm doing this. I am marking this up with black marker or Sharpie, whatever, so that I can test to see if the seat between this here ball joint and my spindle are going to be good. I figured I would show you how to do this. I'm hoping it comes up on the camera really well. So mark it all up in black, or whatever color. I guess it don't have to be black. And then grab your shelf of spindle. I got mine right here. And then we're just going to set it on. Set it down there. Kind of wiggle it just a little bit, right? We pull it back up. But you can kind of see where it was sitting on here. You can see it leave kind of rings. It's really hard to see. You can kind of see it here, right here, of where it's actually making contact with the ball joint. And you want to see a nice consistent contact. You don't want it only riding on one little edge and the rest of it kind of flopping around in there. So, all right, so since that didn't give me really the wear pattern on the Sharpie that I wanted on the ball joint, it's not making, you know, really good contact all the way through the spindle. It's only making contact with part of the inside of the spindle. So what we're going to do is we are going to ream out the bottom of the spindle to make it fit. I've already kind of done it a little bit. Let's see if you can see in there. You can see kind of clean on the first half. That back half over there is a little bit filthy still. I've reamed a little bit. Just to kind of give you an idea, I wanted you to be able to see a difference. So I got myself a reamer. I've been doing this by hand. I get a little overzealous with the drill, so I'm going to be doing it by hand, but make sure you put some type of lubrication in there, and then you can go in, and as straight as you possibly can, you're just going to ream it and clear it out until you've basically reamed all the way through to a point where it sits how you want it on the ball joint, which is with as much contact all the way from top to bottom as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So I guess while I'm doing this, again, just by hand, I'm shoving it in there, twisting. But I didn't greatly explain why it's important to do this. It's basically, so you have your bolt, right? Or rather the ball joint. And then it sits up against the wall inside the spindle, wrapped around it. Now, if the spindle and the ball joint don't have the same pitch thread, or not same pitch thread, but the same pitch ream inside the bottom there, you'll get this thing where only part of the ball joint is in contact with the spindle, which will allow it to move around inside, right? So it's important to ream this out to fit your ball joints. Now, for mine's a 10-degree ball joint that I'm using. So I'm using a reamer that's 10 degrees, which I believe is like, what is it? What do they call it? 2 inch per foot or something like that. But it's something like that. I'll probably put it right here just to make sure I'm not greatly wrong. But if you don't do that, you can break a lot of ball joints and not understand why. A lot like I did. I wasn't really sure why I kept going through these lower ball joints. And again, that's just one of those things that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about or don't tell you when you're putting together the car, you know. So make sure you're reaming out your spindles to fit your ball joints. It's important to do. This actually takes a little while by hand. Again, I don't want to use a drill because I get a little drill happy. Plus, I don't want to mess up my reamer. They're not exactly cheap. So I'm going to continue to do this by hand. I'm not going to make you guys watch, but I will definitely show you the finished product. So, all right, so we're going to do the thing again. I already reamed it out. Now, as you can see, I don't know if you can see in there very well, but it's all nice and clean all the way through. This was a used spindle, so it was kind of nice trying to ream it, you know, all the way through to get it to clean. Another way you can check this, of course, is to take a ball joint that's out, shove it inside, and make sure you don't feel any wiggle. And I don't. But we can go back to the Sharpie method, draw all over it, install, uninstall, and you can faintly tell, it's really hard to see on camera, I'm sure, but the contact patch from the Sharpie where it was is consistent all the way from here to here. Now, the only other thing that you need to worry about, I guess, would be reaming this deep enough. I am reamed all the way through, but right now I believe the top of my spindle, this portion of my spindle where the nut goes, actually stops kind of up here, just a little bit up the thread, you know, so there's, you know, 1 or 2 threads where the diameter is actually smaller and that's not contacting inside the spindle. Do I think that's gonna hurt anything? No, as long as the rest of this is square and it's not actually pivoting somewhere on the shaft of this after you ream it. Right now, for grins and giggles, because I have another spindle that I got to do this to. I wanted to know just how far in I got to go, because a new spindle, I'm not going to have like rust and stuff to be able to tell off of. So I took my set of calipers and I measured the outside the diameter of the hole. Here, man, this is hard to do right here, but I tried to get out towards the edge as far as I could. And right now, it measures at 0.816. 0.816 from here to here. Now, doing a little bit of research, I looked on Bob Harris's website, and he sells spindles that have already been reamed. And I do believe I was calling him Bill Harris earlier. It's Bob Harris. I don't know why I was saying Bill. It's Bob Harris. Anyways, on his website, he sells spindles that have already been reamed, and he has two sizes listed. Size number 1, I believe, is 0.830, and the next one is 0.870. Again, those would just drop the spindle down a little bit farther onto the ball joint. I think the 0.81 whatever that I have is good, but if you're looking for consistency throughout your car, every time you do this, you're going to want to aim for the same thing every time, because of course when you're changing the height of your spindle, you're changing where your roll center is. Do I think 20 thousandths of an inch is going to be a noticeable difference on your roll center to the driver's butt? I don't think so. So I mean, if you're using this as notes to try to know where to ream your spindles to, I'd go to that 0.81 mark or a little bit past. Hell, go to the 0.83 or the 0.87. Just be consistent when you do it all the time. Again, I wish this was stuff that people would have told me when I was first putting my cars and stuff together. Nobody ever told me this stuff. So, I just bought ball joints and assumed that they went into these Pinto spindles just fine, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So, it's the fine details. So, I hope that helps. I'm going to go ahead and get these things installed, and we'll go from there. For grins and giggles here, I have never done this before, but I picked it up on a tech tip, basically. The theory is, if you ever want it to come apart again, anti-seize it. If you don't, thread lock it. So I'm gonna put just a small dab of anti-seize on this here ball joint, and then I'm gonna set my spindle on it. I'll go ahead and start my nut. Let me go ahead and bring you closer here real quick. You can see the nut screwed down is like a mile away from where the pin goes, or the cotter pin goes to hold it in place. This is supposed to, crown nut, is supposed to stop in a spot where a cotter pin can go through one of these slots. Sorry, I think that's pretty blurry, but where a cotter pin can go through one of these spots to lock this nut on, and you see this ginormous gap. So I'm gonna have to go get something to space this so that when I tighten it down, the nut does stop here. But it's like 2 o'clock in the morning, so I'll have to wait until tomorrow, or rather later today, to go get that. I'm gonna go ahead and do the upper ball joint as well. In this case, I'm just gonna drop it right around the mouth of the spindle. Then I'm gonna drop the upper ball joint in. Boom. And then start my nut. And again, we're gonna be in the same situation here. Up top, we're gonna have to find a spacer for up here. So I think we're gonna call it good for the night and start over again tomorrow, since it's the weekend. Woot woot. Keep thrashing away starting tomorrow. Alrighty, so I went to Home Depot. Actually, I went to a couple places, but I got myself some stuff to do spacers. I couldn't find what I really wanted. I actually wanted to make like a nice spacer for right here. Get myself an already pre-made spacer, or even go get myself a piece of pipe or something that's kind of thick walled that would go around that. But I ended up having to get a 3/4 inch nut. This is 5/8, but then you got that little bit of taper, right? So I went with 3/4 inch so that the taper didn't bottom out in this before it got tight on the spindle. So 3/4 inch, it kind of flopped around in there, but it's nice and strong. And then put my crown nut on, and then of course my cotter pin. Folded this one over on the top, and then on the other side I folded down. And then kind of the same thing on the top here. I ended up using old washers that I had, but I put actually a lock washer on this side because it spreads, just in case it came in contact with the taper of the ball joint, right? So it's got that lock washer's got that cut in it, so it'll spread around it. And then I put another little 5/8 washer here, tightened it up and cotter pinned it. So there we have it. It is on. I'm going to go ahead and show you. I'm going to take this out and let it move. See if I can work the camera and this, but up and down, nice and smooth, no squeaks. I love it. I'm going to go ahead and pin this back up in here. Next couple things that we're going to end up doing, of course, we got to still get a spring in here, and we got to get our rotor bearings, all that happy stuff on here. I think we're going to cover all that in another video though. Alright, so there was one other thing I wanted to show you. This is going to be my spindle for the other side. I wasn't going to show you installing it, but this is a brand new spindle, and I kind of want to show you the importance of reaming your ball joint. So lower ball joint, the upper ball joint seems to fit fine, but the spot for the lower ball joint, I'm going to show you here, definitely has to be reamed, because it's not even a large enough diameter for the ball joint to go all the way through. So on the new ones, you're definitely going to have to ream them unless you're using a stock ball joint. But the other one is, and I'm still sitting here by my left side, where your tie rod mounts. So I got this tie rod set up. I got a spacer, and then you bolt up to the spindle right here, but it goes through a heim joint with a 5/8 bolt. As you can see on this one, 5/8 bolt goes through. Nice. On this one, it is still technically tapered for a stock tie rod, I believe. So as you can see, 5/8 bolt doesn't go in. So I'm gonna have to drill this out on this new spindle as well before I install it. And I don't think I mentioned, I mean, I'm doing all of this by hand. Honestly, your best bet is to chuck this up in in a drill press so that it goes through nice and straight. I mean, same thing when you're reaming. The straighter and more exact you can be, the better. But I'm not a guy that owns a drill press and has those kind of tools, so I'm kind of stuck doing it by hand. But if you got a drill press, I mean, I highly suggest doing it with a drill press or a mill, or I mean, whatever you got to do it, to make this as straight as possible and as exact as possible. So keep that stuff in mind when you are reaming out for your ball joints and hooking up to your tie rods and stuff. Okay, so I kind of wanted to show you what I did about these, because I know I told you I would in a previous video. So I got my new control arm here. I'm going to go ahead and try to install it. And as you can see, maybe you can't really see it, but the front part of this control arm actually goes in really well, no problem. But this one kind of stops and gets jammed up and won't slide in all the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up just a little bit. It's probably, who knows, my lower control arms were so messed up. It's probably been bottomed out and bent and curled in, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So just a little tweak is probably all we're going to need to make this thing successful. I'm going to use my really big crescent wrench I got. Just open this up just a little bit. I don't think it's going to take much, honestly. Try that, see what happens. Oh yeah, much better. Yep, much better. So now both are in a position to where I can get the bolts in. So that's what I did to the other side as well, just to get these to fit. Is that right, wrong, or indifferent? I don't know. It's just kind of what I thought to do. Really, I think if I was being super anal and perfectionist about this, I'd probably bend these out, right? And then take my 1/2-inch rod and run it through to 100%. Make sure, in fact, you know, take the 1/2-inch rod, run it through, make sure it goes through nice and smooth without any issues. And then I'd probably take a piece of plate or something, maybe even a washer, and place it along here, these areas, you know, and weld it there, just to give that spot a little bit of extra strength, since I've been bending on it and whatnot. But I don't think I need that, because we're talking about some minor adjustments. It's not like this thing was folded over or anything, so I think we're going to be okay with just widening it out a little bit and installing the parts. So that's how I did that. All right, so we mostly got one side put together. In the next video, we'll go over bearings and stuff like that, but you know, lower control arms, ball joints, played with the reamer a little bit. I know I didn't completely ream out the new spindle. I'm going to do that stuff off camera, but it's the exact same premise. Just try to make sure you got a good fit, and that way you're not, you know, breaking ball joints and stuff. So remember, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. And if there was something that you'd have done different, or that you think I'm doing wrong, comment below. I like to see that stuff too, you know. Just because I do it one way doesn't mean there's not another way to do it. And of course, just because I do it one way doesn't mean it's wrong. Or it doesn't mean that it's not wrong, really, right? So again, please share your comments and thoughts and stuff below. Like, subscribe. Bristol is coming up really fast, so you might see me thrashing on this thing, and the videos might get longer just so I can get stuff done and share with you everything that I'm doing. So again, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.